Snow was still clinging to the edges of the Manhattan sidewalks when I stepped out of the black car and stared up at the illuminated glass ballroom where my family was, waiting for me. It should have felt glamorous. Frosted windows, golden lights spilling onto the street, the hum of classical music drifting out each time the doorman opened the door. But it didn't. It felt like walking into a place I hadn't belonged for years. A place I had once called home, and then watched from a distance as it shaped itself around wealth I never touched. I was here for my 30th birthday gala. A gala I didn't ask for. A gala I didn't want. A gala I didn't pay for. But my family did. My wealthy, polished, picture-perfect extended family who loved appearances more than truth. I pushed through the double doors, the warmth rushing over me like I'd stepped into another world. Laughing relatives, crystal chandeliers, champagne glasses reflecting light like diamonds. I tightened my jaw and tried not to look like someone who'd worked 2 jobs most of her 20s, someone who'd paid off student loans with grocery store coupons, someone who absolutely did not fit into this room. But I walked forward anyway, pretending I belonged. People swarmed me instantly. "Oh, she's here. You look beautiful. 30. Can you believe it? You still living in that little studio downtown?" I smiled like their words didn't sting, like I didn't hear the condescension tucked into every compliment. I had learned long ago that they loved me only when I stayed small, manageable, predictable. Then my Aunt Lorraine swept through the crowd, satin dress shimmering with every step, and clinked her champagne glass loudly. "Everyone! The birthday girl has arrived." The room erupted into applause. I swallowed the discomfort rising in my throat. They acted like they adored me, but none of them had called me in months. None had helped when I was drowning in bills. None had cared when I skipped meals to afford textbooks. They loved me now because loving me was part of the show. As everyone raised their glasses toward me, Aunt Lorraine leaned close, her perfume overwhelming, and with a sweet smile said the sentence that detonated my entire life. "So, tell us, darling, how's your Manhattan penthouse?" My smile collapsed. The glass in my hand nearly slipped from my fingers. The world around me blurred. For a moment, I could only hear the blood rushing in my ears. "What, penthouse?" I asked quietly. Silence smothered the room. Every pair of eyes landed on me. Every fake smile dissolved. Aunt Lorraine blinked, confused. "The penthouse your grandmother left you in her will. Don't tell me you don't live there." I felt my chest tighten. My legs nearly gave out. My grandmother left me a penthouse? I had never, not once, heard anything about a penthouse, or about an inheritance, or an endowment, or jewelry. Nothing. For years I had lived in a cramped shoebox apartment, clipping coupons, choosing rent over food, crying quietly at night because life felt like a treadmill I couldn't step off. And all that time my family had known something I didn't. Aunt Lorraine's voice cut through the silence. "Well, surely your parents—" That's when the room shifted. People glanced at each other, down at their shoes, at the ceiling, anywhere except at me, like they had just witnessed a secret slip out into the open. And suddenly I knew. I didn't understand all of it yet, but I knew. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, like velvet suffocating my lungs. My hands were trembling, so I hid them behind my clutch. The string quartet continued playing in the background, but even their music sounded warped, distant, like it belonged to a world I no longer recognized. I stepped back from the crowd. "Excuse me," I whispered. No one moved to stop me. No one offered clarity. No one even seemed surprised by my reaction. They knew. I didn't. I slipped behind a column, leaning against the cool marble as my heartbeat hammered in my chest. My fingers shook as I pressed them into my temples. A penthouse, left to me, that I never received. And if there was one thing my family excelled at, it was taking what wasn't theirs. I inhaled deeply and finally let the truth settle, cold and sharp. They stole from me. My own parents stole from me, and every person in that ballroom knew it. I pressed my lips together, suppressing the urge to scream, the urge to cry, the urge to shatter something fragile and glittering. Instead, I straightened my back. Because if there was one thing the past 10 years had taught me, It was how to hold myself together when the world was falling apart around me. I glanced at the ballroom entrance doors, watched a fresh wave of guests arrive, and felt my composure returning, piece by piece. If they were going to uncover truths tonight, then so was I. My voice came out steady, colder than the snow outside. "My name is Lena Hart," I whispered to myself. "And I know how to find things people try to hide." I stepped back toward the crowd, my heart steady now, my breathing calm, my spine straight, because there was one detail Aunt Lorraine didn't know, and neither did anyone else. For the past 4 years, I had worked as a forensic financial analyst, specializing in uncovering hidden accounts, illegal transfers, offshore shells, forged documents, and stolen assets. I didn't discover fraud for a living. I hunted it. And I was damn good at my job. Which is why a month before my birthday, when something about my parents' finances felt off, I ran my own quiet audit. And what I found wasn't small. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate, calculated, and years in the making. And tonight, the night of my forced gala, I had planned to stay silent. My mother's eyes glistened with guilt she couldn't hide. We had reasons. Financial reasons, my father added, jaw clenched. Business wasn't going well. "So you stole my inheritance?" I asked. He exhaled shakily. "We needed it more." "No," I said. "You wanted it more." He looked away. That was enough. Because I knew every step they had taken, every transaction disguised as a loan, every signature falsified, every offshore shell registered under fake names. I hadn't told them what I discovered. Not yet. The night was still young, and so was my revenge. "Enjoy the party," I said quietly. "It will be the last one you enjoy for a long time." I turned and walked away, leaving my parents pale, breathless, and terrified. Because they still didn't know what I had planned for them by midnight, and they didn't know the truth. The girl they stole from for 10 years had become the woman who now owned everything they bought with stolen money. The cars, the properties, the stocks, the luxury items, all of it, including the penthouse they thought they'd buried forever. Tonight wasn't just my birthday. It was the night I dismantled my entire family. And the night had only just begun. The moment I walked away from my parents, the entire ballroom shifted around me. People pretended to sip champagne and nibble hors d'oeuvres, but their eyes followed me like I was the main event, and in a way, I was. Something about secrets being exposed turns even the most respectable, polished relatives into silent spectators. They weren't interested in me. They were interested in the unraveling. The string quartet in the corner changed the song to something slower, more emotional, like an apology tied into a melody. It didn't matter. Nothing could smooth what was already rippling under the surface of this gala. I found a quieter spot near the balcony doors and stepped outside. Cold winter air slapped against my face, a relief from the suffocating tension inside. The city lights glittered below me, Manhattan stretching wide with its noise, its motion, its indifference. Unlike my family, the city didn't lie. It didn't pretend to love you. It didn't say one thing while doing another. It just existed. Open, brutal, honest. I wrapped my arms around myself, staring down at the streets far below, replaying my aunt's words. "How's your Manhattan penthouse?" Just 8 words that shattered 12 years of assumptions, broke open a decade of financial lies, and reminded me that even in a room full of people who shared my blood, I had always been alone. A soft voice broke through my thoughts. "Lena, you okay?" It was my cousin, Evelyn, one of the few family members who never treated me like background noise. She stepped beside me, her red coat draped over her arms, cheeks flushed from the cold. "You look like you're about to pass out." I forced a smile. "I'm fine." "No, you're not," she said gently. "I saw your face when Aunt Lorraine mentioned the penthouse." She hesitated. "You really didn't know, did you?" I shook my head. "No." She exhaled sharply. "God, I'm so sorry." Her sincerity almost broke me. Almost. "I wish I could say I'm surprised," she continued, leaning on the balcony railing, "but your parents have always been weird about money, especially after your grandmother died." A chill ran down my spine, colder than the winter night. "What do you mean, weird?" She hesitated. I don't know the details, but I remember hearing whispers years ago about them. Selling some property your grandmother left. I thought you knew. I didn't, I said simply. Evelyn winced, guilt washing over her face. I didn't want to get in the middle of anything. But seeing you tonight? I wish I had said something sooner. I appreciated her honesty, truly. But nothing she said altered what? I already understood. My parents hadn't just stolen. They had buried an entire life I was supposed to have. A life my grandmother had intended for me. A life I would have built differently if I'd known. Evelyn touched my arm softly. What are you going to do? I turned toward the glowing ballroom windows. The silhouettes of relatives laughing, drinking, celebrating a lie. I'm going to finish what I started. Evelyn frowned. What does that mean? I faced her fully. And for the first time tonight, I allowed someone to see the truth behind my calm expression. I already knew something was wrong before tonight, I said. A month ago, I ran an audit on their financials. You... She stopped, eyes widening. You audited your own parents? Yes, I said without apology. And I found everything. Everything? She whispered. Offshore accounts. Wire transfers. Real estate sold under shell corporations. 10 years' worth of documents with forged signatures. The sale of the penthouse. The liquidation of the jewelry. The disappearance of the trust. Evelyn gripped the railing, staring at me like she was seeing an entirely different person. Lena, what are you planning to do with that? I looked back at the ballroom. Tonight, I said softly, I'll become the rightful owner of every asset they bought with stolen money. She covered her mouth, shocked into silence. And by tomorrow morning, I continued, their accounts will be frozen, their properties will be under legal review, and they'll finally learn what it feels like to lose everything. Evelyn shivered. Lena, that's... I know, I said quietly. But they chose this. A gust of winter wind blew between us, whipping my hair across my face. Evelyn stepped closer. Are you sure? She asked softly. This isn't revenge. This is the end of your family. I met her eyes without flinching. They ended at the moment they took what was mine. She didn't try to talk me out of it after that. She knew better. We walked back inside together. Warm air enveloped us again, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and catered food. The ballroom felt even louder now, as if it were trying to drown out the cracks forming beneath the surface. My parents were across the room, whispering fiercely to each other. My mother kept glancing at the exit like she wanted to run. My father kept wiping sweat from his brow despite the freezing temperatures outside. Good. Fear suited them. I stepped toward the stage where a microphone stood. A band member noticed me and nodded respectfully, stepping aside like he sensed something unfolding. Evelyn whispered, Are you giving a speech? Yes, I said. But it's not planned. Neither was discovering I own a penthouse. Evelyn fell silent. I climbed the 3 steps to the platform and stood behind the microphone. The clinking of glasses gradually stopped. Conversation softened. Heads turned. My father took 1 step forward, panic flashing across his face. Lena, he hissed. Don't. My mother shook her head rapidly, mouthing, No, not here. I smiled. Cold. Calm. Unshakable. Good evening, I said into the microphone. The room hushed completely. I just wanted to thank everyone for celebrating my 30th birthday with me. It means more than you know. I scanned the room, meeting faces that suddenly seemed unsure whether to smile or brace themselves. Tonight has been enlightening, I continued, especially when I learned something my parents never told me. My father's face drained of blood. My mother's hand covered her mouth. Apparently, I said, voice steady, my grandmother left me a Manhattan penthouse. A ripple of shock rolled through the guests, though many kept their eyes down, confirming what I already knew. That was news to me, I said, because I never received it. My father stepped forward, eyes wild. Lena, this isn't the place. I raised a hand without looking at him. He froze. I'm not here to argue, I said calmly. I just want to tell the truth. I glanced around the room. In the last 10 years, I've worked hard, very hard. I thought I was paying for my life by myself. I thought it was my responsibility to struggle, to survive, to make it work. The room was silent enough to hear the snow falling against the windows. But what I didn't know, I continued, was that I wasn't supposed to struggle at all. I let the words sink in. My grandmother didn't just leave me a penthouse. She left me an endowment worth over $2 million. She left me jewelry worth 6 figures. Gasps echoed around the room. And all of it, I said softly, vanished. My father broke. "Stop this, Lena." My mother whispered, "Please." But I wasn't done. "I didn't come here tonight to accuse anyone," I said. "Because the truth is, I already know." A deep tension swept the ballroom. Before my birthday, I ran a forensic audit. My voice was surgical. And I found everything. My parents crumpled. The forged transfers. The offshore accounts. The shell companies. The illegal property sales. The fake signatures on the trust documents. I stared straight into their faces. "I know exactly what you stole." People gasped. Others whispered. Some looked at my parents with disgust. "And because of that," I continued, "as of 5 o'clock this evening, I became the legal owner of every asset you purchased with my inheritance." My mother shook her head desperately. "Lena, please." "No," I said. "You don't get to plead now." My father tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "And by midnight," I said calmly, "your bank accounts will be locked pending investigation. Your properties will fall under seizure review, and your remaining assets will be temporarily frozen." My parents collapsed into their chairs. The ballroom was silent, utterly still. I closed my eyes for one brief moment, then opened them again, gaze sharp as glass. "You took 10 years from me," I said. "But I took back everything you built with my stolen life." I stepped away from the microphone. No one clapped. No one laughed. No one dared move. Not yet, but the night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because the gala had one more hour left. And I still had one final, devastating truth to reveal, one my parents had never expected me to uncover. One that would end everything between us forever. I didn't walk back into the ballroom right away. I needed a moment to breathe, to feel the cold outside air on my skin, to remind myself that I wasn't imagining any of this. The sky above the Manhattan skyline had turned a deep navy, the kind that makes the city lights glow like embers. Snow drifted past the terrace railings in slow, lazy spirals, settling gently on the marble floor beneath my heels. Somewhere behind the frosted glass doors, a string quartet was still playing, as if nothing monumental had just shifted inside that room. But I knew better. I knew that the moment I walked back in, everything, not just the gala, not just the night, but the entire architecture of my family, would collapse in on itself. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one at risk of being crushed. I leaned on the cold railing, letting the wind sting my cheeks. My hands were steady. My breath was even. I had imagined this moment so many times. Years of wondering why my parents struggled to pay bills, while their vacations somehow got longer and their cars somehow newer. Years of questioning why I was drowning in student loans while they spent weekends at private wine tastings. Years of lying awake at night, trying to make sense of a family that seemed to grow richer while I grew smaller. A family that always told me, "We're all we have, sweetheart. Money comes and goes." And yet somehow, money only ever went from me and came to them. Every doubt I had ever swallowed was now sitting in 2 thick folders in my bag, labeled and cross-referenced, ready to detonate. The terrace door opened with a soft whisper, and I didn't have to turn to know who had joined me. My mother always walked like she expected the floor to move out of her way. Her heels clicked with an entitled rhythm, sharp, precise, irritated. "What on earth was that stunt in there?" she demanded, stepping beside me. I didn't answer immediately. I watched a taxi crawl through the slushy street 30 stories below us and wondered how many hours I had spent working, jobs that barely covered rent while this woman lived off money that legally belonged to me. "You embarrassed us," she continued when I didn't respond. "You embarrassed your father. You embarrassed yourself. What were you trying to accomplish, Natalie?" It was almost funny how she still tried to use tone as a weapon. How she spoke to me like I was a child who needed scolding. "I'm curious," I said quietly, still looking at the streetlights below. "When exactly were you planning to tell me that Grandma left me a penthouse?" The silence that followed was immediate and telling. Sharp as broken glass. My mother's breath hitched, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. Your aunt misunderstood, she snapped quickly. You know how she exaggerates. You forged her will. Her shoulders tensed, just barely. Excuse me? I've seen the original, I said evenly, and the altered one, along with the purchase agreement you and Dad signed when you sold the penthouse. And the wire transfers, and the Cayman accounts, and the falsified tax documents. I finally turned to look at her. I know everything. My mother's skin went a shade paler, but she forced herself to stay composed. You don't know what you're talking about. That's ridiculous. I'm a forensic financial analyst, I said. I literally know what I'm talking about for a living. That landed. Her jaw twitched. Her eyes narrowed. You think you're going to ruin this family over some misunderstanding? You ruined this family, I said. 10 years ago, when you stole my inheritance. A long moment passed. One of those moments in which time stretches out like a wire pulled to its limit. Then her mask slipped, just a little. We deserved it more than you, she whispered. We built our lives from nothing. You're young. You would have wasted it. I was 19, I reminded her. Working 2 jobs. Living in a basement apartment with mold on the ceiling. You watched me break myself trying to survive while you spent my money. She didn't deny it. That was her tell. She only ever denied things when she still had control. She didn't have control anymore. Behind us, the ballroom door opened again, and this time it was my father. His tie loosened, his face flushed with anger. Or maybe fear, it was hard to tell on him. What's going on? He demanded, stepping toward us. Your mother says you're making accusations. They're not accusations, I said. They're evidence. He laughed, too loud, too forced. You're being dramatic. Whatever your aunt said in there, she misunderstood. There was no penthouse. You lived in it for 3 years before selling it, I said. I know the building. I know the dates. I know the buyer. I know the renovations you paid for with my endowment money. His expression flickered. A single crack. You went digging through our finances? He snapped. No, I said calmly. I audited them. Why would you do something like that? My mother demanded. Because I wanted to know why my parents got richer while I got poorer. The wind howled between the buildings, carrying the faint sound of a horn from the street below. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then the terrace door opened again, and my aunt stepped out, her face tight with a mix of pity and anticipation. Everything all right? She asked softly, though her eyes were sharp. I realized then that she wasn't here to intervene. She was here to witness. And maybe that was fitting. All the people who had stayed silent for years were about to see the cost of their silence. I straightened, brushed a fleck of snow off my shoulder, and walked past my parents toward the terrace door. Midnight, I said quietly as I passed them. That's when everything becomes official. My father grabbed my arm. Not painfully, just reflexively, like someone trying to stop a moving train with their bare hands. Natalie, don't do this. We're your family. I looked down at his hand, then back at him. Family doesn't steal from you, I said. Family doesn't lie to you. Family doesn't let you drown. While they build their lives on top of the pieces of yours. I pulled my arm away. He didn't try again. Inside, the ballroom felt different. The air felt heavier. People whispered as I walked past. Though no one knew yet. No one except the ones who had built this entire night on a foundation of stolen money. The chandelier light glittered off champagne glasses, and the quartet shifted into a slower, deeper melody. My friends gathered around me quickly, concern etched into their faces. You okay? My friend Lila asked. I will be, I said. In about 2 hours. Should we do anything? Just stay close. I didn't need support, but I appreciated it. I walked toward the center of the ballroom, where a microphone stood from my earlier toast. I hadn't planned to speak again, but now felt appropriate. I stepped up to it, adjusted it slightly, and the room slowly quieted. People turned toward me, sensing something was coming. I took a slow breath. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began. My voice was steady, controlled. This evening has taken a turn I didn't expect, but I suppose that's fitting. Life tends to reveal truth at the most inconvenient times. My parents stood near the back, stiff and pale. I learned tonight that many of you knew something I didn't, I continued. Something about my grandmother. Something she tried to leave me. A ripple moved through the room, and while I would have preferred that conversation had happened privately, I said, I'm grateful it happened at all. My mother took a step forward, shaking her head subtly, as if silently begging me not to continue. I continued anyway. I spent the last month conducting a full audit of every asset tied to my grandmother's estate, I said. And as of tonight, every fraudulent transfer, every forged signature, every hidden account has been cataloged and legally reversed. A collective gasp rose through the room. My father's face turned a devastating shade of gray. I didn't need to explain further. The people who needed to understand already did. I lowered the microphone and stepped back. The quartet continued playing, but the tone of the room had changed entirely. My parents stood frozen, trapped in the same cage they built for me 10 years ago. I walked off the stage, my heartbeat calm, steady, almost serene. The night continued around me. People laughed nervously. Some avoided my parents entirely. Some whispered to each other, realizing their own gifts from my parents, the vacations, the cars, the business loans, but were now tainted. At 11:58, my phone buzzed. Transfer completed. Court order activated. I exhaled slowly. It was done. 2 minutes later, my parents' phones buzzed at the same time. My mother lifted hers with trembling hands. I saw her face collapse inward as she read the notification. Their accounts were frozen. Their properties were seized. Their cars were repossessed. Everything they bought with my money, gone. Everything that belonged to me, restored. I didn't watch them fall apart. I didn't need to. I turned away from them and stepped onto the terrace again, letting the icy air wash over me. Snow continued falling in soft white sheets, glowing in the city lights. For the first time in 10 years, the world felt balanced. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I wasn't grieving. I was simply done. My name is Natalie Hayes, and tonight, the night of my 30th birthday, I didn't lose a family. I finally let one go.